Good to see you here in San Francisco.
Good to see you too.
What a dinner.
It's pretty interesting.
Yeah. I heard that you were going up to our president and greeting him and telling him about your family, beautiful family in China.
I did. I told him my son was born in Xi'an.
And you said it in Chinese?
I did.
How did you say it?
What art so Xi'an read.
Did he laugh just as you are doing?
He did. He got it. He got it.
Certainly people have been coming with all over the world, especially here in the U.S., gather around. A lot of good friends.
That's right. That's right. The whole world congregated here this week.
Right. What was it like to be in the green room?
It was pretty interesting. Obviously, you had a lot of representation from just about every one of the major U.S. corporations that do business in China, and also a lot of political leaders and others.
Right. Of course, this is right after the Xi Jinping and Biden meeting. You guys already heard about the general meaning of the readout when you were gathering at the green room. So what was the atmosphere? What people are saying about this?
It was positive. I mean, I don't think there were any surprises that came out of their meeting. Fairly constructive, but no kind of major breakthroughs, I guess I'd say.
Yeah, and it seems that both are suggesting communication is important.
Yes, I think that critical was the opening of military to military communications, which is that major kind of guardrail against future potential hot conflict.
And for business communities particularly, you need the stability, you need the predictability. So how were those messages being conveyed to earlier events you went to with the U.S. president and later with the Chinese president?
I didn't feel like there was a real address of the business community. I mean, this was a much more broad address to the American people to kind of talk about the commonalities between the countries, how we'd supported each other during wars of the past, and how we continue to be connected. But there was less of an outreach, I'd say, directly to business interests.
So what about the needs coming from the business community?
We need stability, we need predictability, and again, I think that China, to its credit, has been fairly good about taking on board criticism, constructive criticism, when it comes to improvements around the economy and infrastructure around it. So those need to be improved to help global investor sentiment.
After 3 years of the pandemic, you see China pretty much in the mood of let's open the door and let's make the world know that we are opening the door. Having said that, though, what kinds of communication do you see is crucial, and what kinds of content in terms of delivering is crucial?
Yeah, certainly China is doing its best to recruit and encourage the world to come back to doing business in China after this kind of 3-year hiatus. Again, I think we need predictability. We need communications that explain and rationalize what regulatory actions have happened, why they happened, what's coming around the bend. That lack of predictability is the thing that global investors fear the most.
You see from the expressions coming from the Chinese president, a lot of emphasis being put on people-to-people, local interactions, business economic ties, and things like that. And of course, the young people. So what does that mean? Does it mean that we are likely to have mainly these areas that it's still possible to have common ground? Or does it mean that these areas are likely, even in the near term, nurture the other areas of importance, military, economic, and trade, and things like that?
They go hand in hand. And again, one of the challenges of zero COVID and kind of the environment after it was there was just a handful of, for instance, American students studying in China, just maybe somewhere around 50 to 75. So this initiative that the president announced is critical for bringing thousands, hopefully, of American students. We've got to convince them that they can and should come to China. But it's critical that we generate a new group of individuals that understand China from a first-hand perspective and don't simply read about it.
And earlier during the speech, the Chinese president talked about the ups and downs of the relationship. How do you understand what we are experiencing now with the context of a bigger history?
I think we're at one of the low points. Maybe there were slightly lower points over the last year or two, but this is certainly not a high point in the relationship. But this ebb and flow, as you said, is characteristic of such a dynamic relationship. And I think both countries acknowledge that the world cannot progress unless we are communicating and on constructive grounds.
So now investing in China, tell me more about the details, the nuances. What do you think you would describe to your business partners if they want to ask you, what about investing in China these days?
Our perception is that we're now at we were at lows over the last few months, and now things appear to be on the upswing. We've seen really strong improvement out of the Chinese stocks that we've invested in. And overall, I think from a counter-cyclicality perspective, China is actually better positioned than the West in many ways because of how it's coming out of zero COVID and the time now for stimulating the economy.
Mm-hmm. Now, the cultural exchanges, people to people, extremely important. What do you see might be some of the areas that both sides can really communicate well and make it early harvest, as they say, lower hanging fruits?
I think, again, a lot of this soft power and human to human is critical. So bringing back the pandas, if at all possible, encouraging, again, American students to come, making it very user-friendly gateway to bring them back to the country. It's critical to develop that next generation of Americans that understand at least the conditions on the ground in China. They don't have to agree with anything that's going on, but they have to at least understand it firsthand.
How do you see the proceeding of the so-called trade war today, and how much impact is it going to have on all of us?
It still maintains its current status. It's still challenging to unwind a lot of the trade war actions taken first by the Trump administration and continued on by Biden. So I don't expect an immediate resolution to it. It's very hard to unwind. But in the long term, I think it's critical that we find ways to economically compete while still stimulating business domestically.
The four organizations that organized the dinner, the National Committee on U.S. China Relations, the U.S. China Business Council, Asia Society, and the Council on Foreign Relations, they've been doing this, some say, with a lot of guts, even though they're also doing it with the appeal of their members, because there are already criticism against the members of them. So how do you see these kinds of rhetorics in this part of the world against initiatives like this?
There are certainly the isolationists that would like to cut all communication, and I think that's just not simply realistic, not only because we have huge intercultural, human, and of course economic and political ties, but the world is dependent on these two countries getting along. And so for us to bury our heads in the sand would be a huge disservice to humanity.
So what would you say to your Chinese friends that are coming here at this time?
Well, this has always been a gateway to Asia for the West and for the United States particularly, and there's a huge number of Chinese entrepreneurs that have been educated here, started businesses here, and still continue to build cross-border, and we need to encourage more of that cross-border business development.
Look at the city, so beautiful. Never seen it from this perspective. Now I do.
It's a beautiful view.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me.